The Great Recession of 2008 was a severe global economic downturn that originated in the United States and quickly spread across the world, lasting from late 2007 to mid-2009. It was the most significant financial crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s and had far-reaching implications for economies, businesses, and individuals worldwide. At the heart of the crisis was the housing market bubble in the United States. In the early 2000s, there was a rapid increase in housing prices, fueled by easy access to credit and an influx of subprime mortgage lending. Many financial institutions created complex financial products, such as mortgage-backed securities, that were tied to these subprime mortgages. The belief was that even if some homeowners defaulted, the value of the underlying assets, homes, would continue to rise, making these securities safe investments. However, as interest rates rose and housing prices started to decline, many homeowners found themselves unable to make mortgage payments. This triggered a wave of foreclosures and led to a glut of houses on the market, causing housing prices to plummet further. This collapse in housing values had a domino effect, severely impacting financial institutions that held mortgage-backed securities. Many of these institutions had invested heavily in these assets, assuming they were low-risk investments. The crisis spread beyond the housing sector as a lack of confidence rippled through the financial system. Interbank lending, which is crucial for banks to meet their daily funding needs, froze up as banks became wary of each other's exposure to risky assets. This credit crunch paralyzed the global financial system, causing businesses to struggle to secure funding for their operations, and consumers to find it difficult to access credit for major purchases. In September 2008, the crisis reached a critical point with the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, one of the largest investment banks in the world. This event sent shockwaves through the financial markets, triggering panic and further credit contraction. Governments around the world rushed to intervene, injecting massive amounts of liquidity into the banking system to prevent a complete collapse. The global economy experienced a severe contraction, with many countries slipping into recession. Unemployment rates soared as businesses cut back on hiring or shut down entirely due to reduced consumer spending and restricted credit. Stock markets plummeted, wiping out trillions of dollars in wealth. In response to the crisis, governments and central banks implemented various measures to stabilize their economies. The US government initiated the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, which aimed to purchase troubled assets and inject capital into financial institutions. Central banks also cut interest rates to historic lows and engaged in quantitative easing, a policy of purchasing financial assets to increase money supply and lower long-term interest rates. The global economy began to recover in 2009, but the effects of the Great Recession were long-lasting. Many households lost their homes and savings, and governments faced enormous budget deficits due to increased spending to combat the crisis. Regulatory reforms were introduced to prevent a similar crisis in the future, such as the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act in the United States. In conclusion, the Great Recession of 2008 was a complex crisis rooted in the housing market bubble and risky financial products. Its effects were felt globally, causing widespread economic turmoil, job losses, and financial instability. The crisis prompted significant policy responses and regulatory changes, shaping the financial landscape for years to come. The Great Recession of 2008 had a profound impact on the United States, not only economically but also politically. The crisis played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative of the 2008 US presidential election, influencing voter attitudes, policy debates, and the ultimate outcome of the election. As the recession unfolded, it highlighted the vulnerabilities of the US economy and underscored the need for leadership capable of addressing the crisis effectively. The incumbent president at the time, George W. Bush, faced criticism for his administration's handling of the economic downturn. Many Americans held the administration partly responsible for the lax regulatory environment that contributed to the financial crisis. This sentiment eroded public trust and approval ratings for the Republican Party, paving the way for a political shift. The Democratic Party's candidate, Barack Obama, seized the opportunity to position himself as the agent of change and a leader capable of navigating the nation through these turbulent times. Obama's campaign message of hope and progress resonated with voters who were disillusioned by the economic turmoil and seeking a fresh approach. His background as a community organizer and a senator promising bipartisan solutions further appealed to voters looking for unity in a divided country. The economic crisis also redirected the focus of the campaign. Initially, foreign policy and the Iraq War were expected to dominate the election discourse. However, the recession shifted the conversation to economic issues, particularly job loss, foreclosure rates, and financial regulation. Obama's promises to reform Wall Street, create jobs, and provide relief to struggling homeowners aligned well with the concerns of the electorate. John McCain, the Republican nominee, faced a challenging task in distancing himself from the unpopular Bush administration while maintaining his party's economic principles. His decision to suspend his campaign briefly to address the financial crisis was seen by some as a way to showcase leadership, but it also led to accusations of political grandstanding. The economic turmoil fueled a growing sentiment for change among the American electorate. As voters saw their retirement savings evaporate, job opportunities dwindle, and homes foreclosed upon, there was a widespread feeling that the status quo was untenable. This sentiment played into Obama's narrative of change and was reflected in his campaign slogan, "Change we can believe in." The televised presidential debates also offered a platform for the candidates to address the economic crisis directly. Their responses to questions about the financial industry's role in the recession, government intervention, and economic recovery plans showcased their understanding of the issues and their proposed solutions. Obama's composed demeanor and his articulation of detailed economic policies helped solidify his image as a thoughtful and knowledgeable leader during times of crisis. As the election neared, the financial crisis and the recession became a defining factor for voters. The dire economic circumstances created an environment in which voters sought assurance that their chosen leader had the expertise and vision to guide the nation back to prosperity. Obama's focus on empathy and his ability to connect with voters on a personal level contributed to his appeal during these challenging times. In November 2008, Barack Obama was elected as the 44th President of the United States. His victory was seen as a response to the economic crisis and a desire for change in leadership. The economic turmoil not only influenced the outcome of the election but also set the stage for the policy priorities of the new administration. In conclusion, the Great Recession of 2008 significantly influenced the 2008 US presidential election. The economic crisis shifted the focus of the campaign, undermined public trust in the incumbent party, and propelled Barack Obama's message of change and unity. The crisis created an environment in which voters were seeking leadership capable of addressing the economic turmoil, ultimately shaping the electoral landscape and the direction of the country for years to come. The echoes of the 2008 Great Recession continue to reverberate in today's economic landscape. One of the most notable impacts has been the implementation of stringent financial regulations aimed at preventing a recurrence of the crisis. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, enacted in 2010, imposed greater transparency and accountability on financial institutions, aiming to curb risky behavior and promote stability. However, debates persist about the balance between regulation and fostering innovation, as some argue that excessively strict regulations could hinder economic growth. The recession also laid bare the vulnerabilities in the global financial system and underscored the interconnectedness of economies. The crisis had a cascading effect, revealing how a downturn in one country could quickly spread and impact others. This lesson has led to a greater emphasis on international cooperation and coordination in managing economic challenges. It's highlighted the importance of monitoring global financial markets and developing mechanisms to address potential systemic risks across borders. On a broader level, the recession exposed the need for responsible lending practices and prudent risk management. The prevalence of subprime mortgages and complex financial products highlighted the dangers of pursuing short-term gains without considering long-term consequences. This lesson has influenced consumer protection policies and a more cautious approach to lending, encouraging financial institutions to prioritize sustainability and ethical practices over excessive risk-taking. Moreover, the enduring aftermath of the recession is felt by individuals and households. Many people lost their homes, jobs, and savings during the crisis, leading to a greater emphasis on financial literacy and personal financial management. As a result, individuals have become more cautious about debt and more focused on building emergency funds and retirement savings. The experience has also led to skepticism toward the notion of a perpetually rising housing market, as people recognize the potential risks associated with speculative bubbles. In the realm of economic policy, the Great Recession underscored the importance of having effective tools to combat economic downturns. Governments and central banks have since re-evaluated their response strategies, with a greater emphasis on stimulus measures, unconventional monetary policies, and support for vulnerable sectors during times of crisis. The pandemic-induced recession of 2020 further showcased the significance of these lessons, as governments worldwide swiftly implemented measures to mitigate the economic impacts. In essence, the 2008 Great Recession has acted as a catalyst for reshaping economic policy, fostering international collaboration, and redefining financial practices to create a more resilient and adaptable global economy.